You've probably heard the reports of Marathon's struggles, their budget, their revenue, their layoffs they've been having. So in this video, we're going to investigate and do a deep dive whether Marathon and AAA games, especially live service games in general, can really succeed, or what their future will look like in the long term, and what gaming's future will look like in the long term. To do that, we found the deeper truth to why Marathon and other games like that are struggling, and it's not what most people expect at all, while also finding an even deeper reason beyond the initial one, which answers the question if Marathon will succeed or not. So, as we've seen with numerous companies and video games, they have been shutting down over the last 2 years. For example, Concord was a massive failure, Redfall was shut down, Marvel Avengers was hated and shut down very quickly afterwards, Suicide Squad was also hated, was a disappointment, and then it shut down afterwards, and the list just goes on. And then we're hit with news of developers getting laid off over and over again. Some games, even like God of War, the live service game, or The Last of Us, never see the light of day. And other games like Marvel Avengers, Anthem, and Suicide Squad are cut to pieces when they do make it out, just to shut down later. The most recent game, High Guard, started to cause alarm bells in people's minds. It started to cause alarm bells a little bit in my mind, that it was just another live service, generic game that was just there to get money. And then we see Marathon announced, go through development and have its struggles and have its problems, and then be released. Once again, another live service game. And if we look deeper into Marathon's development, we can start to see the cracks form, as their former art director spoke of major changes taking place. Their game director left midway through and was replaced by a former Valorant dev. Layoffs were made at Bungie during development. Morale takes a huge dive during production. Some developers describe it as the vibes have never been worse. And when they finally released the alpha test, it was met with so much harsh feedback that they had to delay the game and work on it for another year. To top it all off, the worst bit is, we have heard their budget is anywhere over $200 million or over $250 million, which is highly alarming for a game that has reportedly only made $55 million in March. So the next question becomes, how the hell did their budget burst so high? Because let me tell you, it does not matter how great a product is, if you cannot afford its economics, it sinks. So this is where we burst the lid right open. So commonly, and I want you to guess, the reason for the budget is usually assumed to be two different things. And you might have guessed marketing, you might have guessed graphics, but actually neither of those are true. What this article from Jason Schreier shows us is that it's something completely different. Something that we don't expect, but eats at the budget away. In this interview, he had coffee with a video game developer who told him that the work was slow and that they'd been spending half of their days watching Netflix. He was shocked until he remembered how many times he'd heard similar stories. He adds on later by saying, "It's not uncommon for professional video game makers to find themselves spinning their wheels for prolonged periods, during which they get paid to do very little work." So to really drive this point home about how much this costs the company, especially when people aren't doing work but still being paid, I'm going to really break down the maths of this. From what you can tell now, labour is the largest cost in a gaming budget usually. For example, each employee in a city like Los Angeles could cost between $15,000 and $20,000 a month, a figure that includes salaries, benefits and overhead. If you have 100 employees, you're estimating $15,000 a month for each one, so you're spending about $18 million a year. But for top gaming studios, it's much bigger than that, so they'll usually have 300 employees on a game, so you're estimating $20,000 a month for each one, so you're spending close to $72 million a year. Develop a game for 4 years, and that's about $288 million, eerily close to Marathon's estimated budget. Now that is not including, for a live service game, the cost of keeping the product running. That is only for developing the game, not for the servers that continue after the game is built. So now you're starting to see the bigger picture. Labour costs are quite easily the reason why Marathon and other games are starting to rise so high up. But then we have to go a step deeper. We have to ask, why are the budgets rising? Why are the budgets bigger than before? And for some reason, we feel that the games aren't as good as the past. These questions are answered next. So, as we went further into our investigation, we found a few games, and we stumbled and stopped across one key one. That was Suicide Squad, which had answers to many of our questions about how specifically gaming budgets are ballooning, and furthermore, leading into the final answer of the future of live service games and Marathon. We found an article from Bloomberg which detailed their development. So what was said is that across games like Suicide Squad, where staff were specialised in single-player driven stories like Batman Arkham City and Arkham Knight, a flip to an open world live service game with multiple characters is a huge problem. It was something they weren't ready for or weren't as skilled as. Efficiency is now lower because employees just aren't as skilled in building games of this type, or the quality becomes even worse and developing heads are less sure how to steer the ship. This is shown when the report said that the lead developer Hill was said to have scrapped big chunks of the script and struggled to convey his evolving ideas, confessing he hadn't spent much time with competing games such as Destiny. And furthermore, one of the biggest issues was that the battles, levels, and bosses in a live service game needed to be designed so players could tackle them over and over again, while Rocksteady was accustomed to telling stories that were only experienced once, and that staff members sometimes waited weeks or months for Hill to review the work, creating a bottleneck that slowed down further development, which means the game takes longer, or crunches are needed, or the quality isn't good, which never means a good end product for the user, me or you, or good sales for the company, or the reputation just gets worse. So now we can see a secondary problem emerging for a lot of game studios that are taking longer to produce their games because of poor management and scheduling, or the fact that there are delays, or the fact that the workers aren't as skilled with one type of game as another, so it creates bottlenecks. And so what about Marathon? We can see that other studios suffered due to mismanagement, poor timing, or being unskilled in the field they were working at. But Marathon and Bungie already made Destiny, so how did that affect them? But Marathon did suffer from mismanagement issues. Marathon suffered from a number of key changes, which included a switch in game directors, an alpha that brought a further number of revamps. The new director decided to change the core mechanics midway through development, which the former art director described as a big one. In the case of production, it was a fairly significant event and had to be incredibly quickly done too. This is in reference to them initially wanting a customizable player character, your own unique runner that would scavenge for implants and synths to build their own unique playstyle. The goal was for players to feel a personal connection to their gear and their specific build rather than playing a class or hero. The new director, however, opted for more rigid hero classes. The art director emphasised this problem by saying the game design itself had a pretty profound evolution midway through, and that changed the visual psychology a fair amount. The morale was described as being in freefall across all departments by developers working there, and the vibes have never been worse, as one employee said. So the game having to revamp itself twice, while having employees being laid off, reducing the workforce to 300, we can start to see how the game's budget is ballooning. Across these two games and our research, management stood out as the clear problem. Directors and heads that tasked a development department to make a game without a clear or solid plan that kept changing midway through, or without a vision that aligned from top to bottom, or clear scheduling. The lack of a cohesive vision is what really bottlenecked Marathon's development. A better company would have hired a developer that was in line with the previous ones, so the production could flow smoothly. So we can see how the budget is rising. An alpha that brings a delay of 6 months, which extends labour costs by that much, a morale that's swiftly dying, a change in core mechanics and minor features like puzzles that were scrapped, showing again the problems start from the top. But then, how do other games manage, like Arc Raiders, being a successful indie hit with a much higher peak player count as this video is released, and what can Marathon and other games learn from it? Arc Raiders, with longer development time, around 7 years compared to Marathon's 4 years, but with only 60 to 75 developers. Arc Raiders had a clear plan and developed a quality project with a fair budget and patience from their dialogue. You get the vibe it's a well-oiled machine and a team that's connected in its goals and aims. Very different from what we've previously discussed. Bungie took only 4 years and 1,300 people approximately on staff before layoffs worked on Marathon and Destiny. A ginormous cost increase even though the development time was reduced. In addition to poor morale and falling senior organisation meant that a workforce of 20 times bigger than Arc Raiders reduced the production time for about 3 years but increased the cost by over 200%, all with a similar amount of content on launch. To make matters worse, it is irrelevant of their speed of production if it doesn't benefit their bottom line. The positive cash flow will have surpassed between 200 to 250 million. Their positive cash flow for Marathon will have to surpass between 200 to 250 million dollars. Last month, one analyst said Marathon hasn't exactly made the splash Sony and Bungie wanted, estimating sales around 1.2 million copies. And Analea Analytics estimated gross revenues of around $55 million. Their costs do not currently include running costs of the live service game. So quickly we can see that no matter how good this game was going to be, or even if people enjoy it, if the economics of this game aren't fine, it is a flop. It will fail, it will suffer, and people's jobs will be lost sadly because of management. So we can see there is a way for live service games and high quality games to succeed, just like Arc Raiders has done, building a concise, well-oiled machine of talented developers who have had experience and know what they want from a game. They did not rush it, they took their time and worked with it through previous mistakes. This in the end did not require their budget to bloat up so high, and in the end they can turn a profit. Embark Studios also aimed to create games that were fun to play, but to make development itself more enjoyable and sustainable for their teams. Once again, a difference in comparison to Marathon and Bungie. Like early Valve with Half-Life, Embark refused to rush. They iterated, pivoted, and rebuilt until the games felt right. They had a small, skilled workforce, which meant the budget didn't balloon as high, while having a clear goal and a clear vision for the whole team, and this led with a wide array of success, meaning it is already more popular than Marathon and has continued to be so, even though it was released earlier. So as a result, we can see after all our research where Marathon and all other live service AAA games will end up. Marathon's future looks bleak as a result of mismanagement, moral decline, and a failure to meet revenue goals. While combined with the bad fact that Sony are already wary of Bungie's future after they previously failed to meet revenue goals by about 50% with their latest DLC for Destiny. I find it extremely difficult to see how they'll make back $200 million in the next 2 years, even if a paid DLC is released with large microtransaction markets. Making up for that money and ongoing costs is difficult to see. If they released, let's say, a DLC for $20 and the game for about $40 as a $60 package, they would need about 3 million in sales, while about a couple 100,000 game owners bought the $20 DLC to break roughly even, and that's just some rough maths. So as a result, I just find it extremely hard to see why Sony would continue the Marathon adventure, continue the Marathon journey, when simply put the economics don't make sense and they don't add up. As a result, I believe there will be more layoffs from Bungie, and it may go the XDefiant route of slowly quieting down until they close the servers permanently. And for the gaming industry, I believe there'll be some more layoffs, where some developers will move into different sectors of the job market, and others will develop indie games where we will begin to see more AA games like Arc Raiders, Dispatch, and Expedition 33, where small skilled teams with well-sized budgets are pushing passion projects that can have massive success and want to push themselves onto projects that excite them. So in the end, this is where I definitely see the future of the gaming market lie. I see skilled developers getting sick and tired of being crunched and dealing with poor morale and bad management, and deciding to leave and start their own studios, develop their own games, have a clear focus and have a clear understanding and work well with their teams. So we'll see the rise of AA games, not indie developers as such, but skilled developers from big studios that have left to start their own projects, and we will see a lot more success stories in my opinion.